Healing and breakthrough is coming. The Lord has a plan for your life and expected in. And while you're going through something, tell all your hurt, pain, misery, and strife. A brand new season, a brand new day, a new.
Hello, and welcome to the Stepping Into ANEW You Show. I am your host, Ivy Caldwell, and today my guest is Dr. Celia McIntosh. Dr. Celia, welcome to the show, and I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, I want to thank you for having me today. So I'm Dr. Celia McIntosh, and I am a nurse, a mother, grandmother, and I've been a nurse for about 20 years, 20 plus years, and a nurse practitioner for about 13. I've worked in a variety of different settings, from emergency to open heart step down to cardiac step down.
Mm.
And I've spent the last 13 years of my career working in neuroscience, where I see a lot of patients with strokes, seizures, MS, a variety of different things. And I am an author.
Wow, it takes a special person to do the type of work you do. So, what made you decide to become a nurse, to get into this field?
So I would say it actually started when I was a nurse's assistant. I started my career initially as a home health aide, but then I transitioned to being a certified nurse's assistant. And it was at that time where I was working with several different nurses in a nursing home, and I was just thinking that I could do a better job from some of the practices that I was seeing.
Oh, wow.
And so I decided to actually become a nurse. And as I was becoming a nurse, my initial first passion was law,
Mm-hmm.
but I realized that I did not have to go to have some kind of political science degree to go to law school.
Yeah.
So I decided that going to nursing school would give me a way to advocate for my patients.
All right.
And that's essentially why I went down that path, because I wanted to, advocate for my patients and their families. And I figured at some point in my life, I would be able to marry law and nursing at some point.
Yes, yes. And you are at that point now?
I am. I'm very
Yeah.
much at that point because
Yeah.
I've been very passionate about human rights. Because one of the other things that I do for the last 10 plus years, I've been an advocate for anti-trafficking efforts.
Mm.
So I do a lot of work around social justice related issues, Black maternal health, food insecurity. Been on the Police Accountability Board
Wow.
for, just community policing. So a lot of the arrows point to law in a way. So I'm definitely at that point, especially with everything changing in the country.
Awesome, awesome. You are amazing. Awesome, awesome. So you and I are in a book together, a
Yes.
few other authors, and it's called Transitioning to the Other Side: How to Cope with the Loss of Life, Volume 4. What spoke to you when you got the invitation about being a part of this project?
I think honestly, because I don't ever recall as a nurse, I mean, there's times when we debrief about patients,
Mhm.
but I've never recalled actually telling the stories or some of the stories that I feel have impacted me over my career.
Yeah,
So when I saw this opportunity, I figured this was going to be an opportunity to kind of get that out.
yeah,
And I think another thing that triggered it was in the midst of COVID, there
mm,
were a lot of nurses also talking about how, the environment was, and, just how intense and how scary and frustrating, and just a lot of grief
yeah, yeah.
that was happening in those environments. But the one thing that I saw was they were being gaslit. They
Mm,
weren't able
mm,
to share
mm.
their stories. A
Yeah,
lot of discussions around you signed up for the job.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
really wanted to, talk about that aspect of it because I don't necessarily hear nurses having those conversations because when they do, they're made to feel bad about speaking up.
yeah, yeah. So that will be something that you would do then, start advocating for the nurses. Let's get this conversation going. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just since, the book has launched,
Mhm.
one of the things that I'm already noticing is that this is not just about nurses. There's going to be a lot more conversation around first responders
Oh, wow.
because someone mentioned that to me the other day saying, has that perspective been explored? So I feel like this will be a conversation starter
Yeah.
for many of those individuals as well.
A launching pad for you. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Um, you gave me a perspective about the healthcare field that I never thought about after I read your chapter about what nurses go through or those in healthcare, period, how they see grief, they see death, they're right like smack dab in the middle of it, and you're not allowed time to grieve. It's like you got to go to the next patient, not realizing that if someone's in the hospital for a period of time, you're building a relationship with them. And of course, it affects you because you have the firsthand knowledge and you're there working with that patient.
Yes. Yeah, that's a side that I've heard just since the launch of this book. That is a new perspective for me. That's what I keep hearing.
Yeah.
People did not think about that. They said, I've lost a parent and I've grieved that parent. But for a nurse or a provider to have to go in like 12 hours a day, 3 to 4 times a week, and, maybe you have a caseload anywhere from 6 to 10. When I worked in the emergency department, I would start with 6 patients, but then I would discharge some. So, I mean, by the end of the night, I could have seen a total of 18 patients,
Yeah.
so I could be going from coding a patient to going from admitting another patient, from another patient dying on me, from me discharging a patient. So there's just so much variety in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Mm, wow. Well, I am so glad you were in this anthology. I'm so glad you were in here to bring light to this and start this conversation and get it going. Um, when was the first time you experienced a loss as a nurse? How did you feel and how did you process that grief?
The first time I experienced loss was with my first patient, and I speak briefly about this patient in the book and just seeing her decompensate
Mm,
and knew she was ready to go.
mm,
Her breathing shifted, and it just seems like she was so ready, but she wouldn't go.
mm.
And, she was one of these women that would put on her makeup every day. So, we were standing there and we are like, well, maybe we should put on her makeup. Maybe that's what she's waiting for, because we just felt like she was suffering.
Yeah, yeah.
So, ended up putting on her makeup, and very shortly after, she passed away. And
Wow.
it was like, I think that moment taught me about even in death and
Hmm.
sickness, maintaining dignity for that individual.
Yeah,
So I think how it made me feel was it made me feel, good in the way that I was able to maintain that for her. Um, but in terms of processing it, I think we talked about it,
yeah.
but never really unpacked it further than that.
Mm,
Yeah, so it was just a matter of conversations with coworkers, but
yeah,
never really thought deeply about
yeah,
how that impacted me. I just feel like I took the lessons from that and just embedded it into my practice as a nurse as I evolved.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Mm. Ooh, okay, so What loss has made the most impact on you?
I was thinking about this the other day. I did lose an uncle, but I think the loss that sticks with me more is the other patient that I mentioned in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things where she just knew that something was wrong and
Yeah.
had this feeling of doom.
Mm.
And, it didn't matter how much I try to console her, try to get the proper providers in the room, um, and just trying to be there for her and just kind of explaining things. She just couldn't shake that feeling that something was wrong.
Yeah.
And her greatest fear came true.
Mm.
And so I think just actually for me and the provider that was at the bedside, actually seeing that loss happen in real time really stuck with me. And that's been over 10 years.
Wow.
But, me and this individual, we occasionally see each other in passing, my other coworker, and we talk about it.
Yeah.
And so 10 years later, we still think about it. So I think that was the greatest loss, but it also taught me another lesson how valuable it is to listen to your patients.
Mm.
That even though the vital signs may not be doing anything, crazy, maybe, they're calm or, different things, but they have a sense of their body and what's going on with them, and that listening to them is the best thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Now I'm gonna throw something kind of personal in here. So, with the patient that lost the baby, how soon do they come in and take a photo of the baby if they do that?
So what happens initially, like after the miscarriage, I would say, after that loss, we typically have to collect the product of conception, is what essentially we call it,
Mm.
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And we have to send that to the lab.
Okay. So it just goes to the lab, but they don't take an actual photo of the baby. Okay.
We No, we didn't. I don't know if they do something of that once
Okay.
they get down to the lab, but we had to collect it in a cup,
Yeah.
collect the product of conception in a cup, and then send that down to the lab.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. What would your message of hope be to the caregiver who just experienced their first loss with a patient?
In terms of my message, I would say definitely make sure you're making the time, finding the time, finding someone that you can unpack that loss with. Because I feel like when you don't talk about it, and you are forced to compartmentalize it at times, and you have some dysfunctional processing,
Mm.
in terms of, you know, you may start experiencing other symptoms of like burnout or frustration, and you don't know that it's manifesting in that way because of this loss. You're feeling burdened. You have to go back into that environment where you just experienced this. You haven't talked to anybody about it, or you've been told that, kind of move on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would say definitely finding, if you have any supportive coworkers, if there's any, uh, at work we call it EAP,
Mhm.
so employment assistance program.
Yeah.
So they tend to have some counseling sessions. So if you can access something like that, or if you can decompress with a coworker or a manager, someone that was there that experienced that loss, talk about it in real time, or talk about it a few days after, just to have that conversation, I think would be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so we know that there is a nurses shortage. And nurses are leaving. What would your message of hope be to a nurse who just said, I've had enough of this? Is there a way to like pull her back, pull him back, or they're at that point where, I'm just done? I mean, what would the message of hope be to them?
Yeah, so and there's some different kind of statistics that kind of say that there's not actually a nursing shortage.
Okay.
There's just a shortage of nurses willing to work in certain environments.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean, but there is, in terms of people leaving, I would say that, sometimes you have to leave for your mental health,
okay.
especially if the environment is getting to the point where it's very toxic,
Mhm.
where you feel like you can't make a difference. I would say in those type of situations that it would be best for you to leave. Sometimes, certain environments aren't for everyone, and they don't find that out until they're in that situation.
Mhm. Yeah.
Until they're in that situation.
Yeah.
So I would say that, if they have to leave, then definitely do that.
Mhm.
I would say that oftentimes, you know, there are a lot of different opportunities out there for nursing, and I think that's the best thing for it. And then there's other ways to advocate for the profession. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the bedside. You can do many other things and still provide that care. You can work in informatics. You can, some people may want to work in hospice. They may want to work in cardiac. They may not want to work in the ICU. They may want to work in an outpatient department. So there's lots of different opportunities. I would say that that's the beauty of nursing. I would say don't give up on the profession itself,
Mhm.
but you can't be good, you can't be available and good for your patients if you're not available and well for yourself.
Yes, I love it. Amen. I agree with you 100%. So take care of yourself. Yeah. All right. So we're getting ready to wrap up. When you hear these four words, what comes to mind? Refined, refreshed, renewed, and restored. The first word is refined. What comes to mind?
I think refined is something that we're always doing,
Mm.
trying to refine who we are, kind of in terms of evolving, changing, tweaking things in our life. So when I think about the word refined, it's how I'm trying to improve myself.
Okay, okay. Refreshed.
For me, I guess I would say refresh would be so I'm not a person that typically is very present. And when I think about, I'm always thinking about the next thing. So I think for me, refresh would be being able to stay in the moment
Oh,
and yeah, stay in the moment and kind of appreciate the things around me.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and just have a new kind of like outlook
yeah, yeah. So
on
think
life.
about the next thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Renewed.
So when I think about renewed, it's also in terms of becoming a better version of myself, or just a renewed way of thinking about things, having different perspectives, and yeah, having different perspectives and thinking differently about things.
Okay, okay. And the final word is restored.
Yeah, restored is essentially for me getting to a space of wholeness,
Mm,
being able to, I think that's what a lot of people aspire to
yes.
be restored, because we go through this life and people take things, from us, or pieces of us,
Mhm.
um, you know, and we lose so much along the way, whether it's time, family, finances, all these things are pieces of us that we lose. So being able, when we talk about restore, it's being able, despite all of those losses, to feel wholeness.
Yes, yes, yes. Amen and amen. I love it. I love it. All right. What is next for you? What do you have in the works?
So what I have in the works now is essentially just I'm actually working on a presentation for a conference coming up in 2 days. So I'm planning on working on that PowerPoint. Just, doing more speaking. Definitely would like to expand and take this book on a virtual book tour, focused on perspectives from the bedside,
Yes.
and to engage and have a lot more of those conversations around grief and for first responders and healthcare providers as a whole.
Yes, yes, yes. Amen. Dr. Celia, I have enjoyed our conversation and I thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. And to my audience, always remember you can become a new you, but you must do the work. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.
A brand